Welcome to Radio Paradigm, and with us today from Spain we have Ole Dammegård, who is one of the most profound and independent investigative journalists of, may I say, our time. His work has been going on for decades, and the aim and results of his work is to be regarded as one of utmost importance. Ole has a Danish and Swedish background, and the latter gave him, I believe, a special qualification to look into one of the strangest cases of the 20th century, which is the murder of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme. This case is officially solved by smearing it onto some lonely bum from the streets of Stockholm, but a majority of people have quite a strong feeling that this is not the true story and that the case is more likely to be unsolved. What we will see today, though, is that this strange, to turn it upside down once again, is far from being unsolved. Ole Dammegård's main work is till now his astonishing book Coup d'etat in slow motion, where he in 1,000 pages filled with events, details, names, persons and connections shows to the world that this case can be solved by connecting the right dots and by allowing yourself to see, which Ole has done, the broader connection to the pattern that seemed to be underlying almost all cases of this type. This pattern is the footprint of the small group of people that call themselves the global elite. With these words, we welcome Ole Dammegård to the broadcast here on Radio Paradigm. Welcome, Ole.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on. My quest for truth started in the early 1980s when I was, I don't know what really started me, but I saw a documentary about the JFK assassination, and that was the first time when I saw the Zapruder film. The Zapruder film, for people who are not aware of it, it's a film made by a bystander, a private person who filmed the whole assassination of JFK. And with his film, even though it turned out that it's been very manipulated, but it's very, very clear that the final headshot came from the front right, behind the so-called picket fence on the grassy knoll, and not from where we were told from behind and from above, where the so-called, the guy who's been blamed for the assassination ever since was sitting. And that really got me into a situation where I thought there's something very, very wrong going on here, because I've been fed this for many years, that this is the official story, and then I see from my own eyes that it's an absolute lie. And that started me reading. I think I read a couple of 100 books on the JFK assassination. And while doing that, I also became very interested in the Robert Kennedy assassination, the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Abraham Lincoln, and almost all the way back to Julius Caesar. Because what I found was that after a while, one of the things that was very confusing for me to start with was that somebody who, I mean, many of these players are similar, they have similar backgrounds. And in one book, for instance, one guy was, employed by the CIA. In another one, he was funded by the FBI. In another one, he was working for the Secret Service. And in yet another book, he was a hitman for the mob. And that was very confusing for me for a while, because I thought somebody must be lying or giving out false information. But it turned out instead that this was exactly how it worked with many of these players, that they were employed by the CIA and the FBI, working sometimes for the mob and sometimes and so on, and funded by somebody in the back, like a hidden hand that was controlling these different events. And so what happened then was that after I don't know how many thousands of hours I put into trying to find out this. At that point, it was only for my own sake, and like I say, it was in the early 1980s. And then after a while, it was almost like I could see there was a pattern, like a clear pattern on how these assassinations on a high level was carried out. how they, not exactly how they did it on a street level, how the shooting was done and so on, but how the whole operation was carried out, and how the general population and was duped into thinking that it was the work of a lone crazy guy, a lone patsy that was just crazy. So he just killed whoever just for no reason, just. And so after a while, I started, just for my own sake, I started writing a book where I tried to put all this information of all these hundreds of books into one, to simplify it, to make it possible to view from a higher point of view. And while doing that, I started seeing, like I said, almost like a clear, like a template they were using, like a bullet point list of how to commit one of these assassinations and how to get away with them. And I managed to track this way back in history, just following, seeing, my God, they did it there, they did it there, they did it there in the 1860s, they did it there. So I managed to almost take it back to what I believe was a tactic used by the old Romans that have just been modified and modernized and used with more high-tech equipment, but exactly the same bullet point list. And while I was doing that, this was in around 1986 that I was starting to get a very clear picture of this. And at the same time, the Swedish Prime Minister, Olaf Palme, was shot down in the streets of Stockholm, which was an absolute shock for Sweden and many, many other countries around, because he was, up until then, we thought that he was the face of democracy, the one helping the weak and fighting against the big nations like USA and other. And so at that point I thought, well, thank God I'm in Sweden, the Swedish police can be trusted. I mean, I live in the perfect democracy where there's no corruption, where everything is exactly the way it should be. And so for sure the police will get this guy very shortly. And then the months went by, and suddenly I started seeing the same template appearing in Sweden as the States, as had appeared in Chile, in Argentina, in South Africa, and it just blew my mind, because I thought, how the hell can these look the same? How can they follow the same template if they're not connected? So from that point, I started looking at these assassinations on a higher level, seeing above nation borders, instead of seeing that the killing of Robert Smith in South Africa was a South African assassination. The overtake of Salvador Allende was for something for Chile, and the killing of JFK was something for the States, and Olaf Palme was a Swedish assassination. Instead of buying into that one, which is the one we're being fed, I started looking on a higher level, and it's taken me about 30 years, but now I managed to track down and prove very strong links between the killing of JFK, the killing of Robert Kennedy, the killing of Martin Luther King, 9/11, Oklahoma City, Salvador Allende, the overtake of Salvador Allende, the killing of Pablo Neruda in Chile as well. He was a Nobel Prize winning poet. The killing of Carlos Prats, General Carlos Prats in Argentina, in Chile as well. Robert Smith in South Africa, Uwe Barschel in West Germany. You have Olaf Palme in Sweden. You have the whole Iran-Contras scandal, which the same players are very fundamental in, and also the killing of Che Guevara. And so it just goes on and on and on and on. And for many years, once again, I was very confused, because I was working on my own just as a private person, trying to find out what happened, how did Sweden, for instance, end up in such a downward spiral from being a country that officially really cared about other nations, that really cared for refugees, that really cared for poor people and so on. After this assassination, it turned into, like, I would say, a very right-wing direction, where people were getting more and more egoistic, that the rich was getting richer and richer, the poor was getting poorer and poorer, and the whole society was slowly being divided, very distinctly, but being divided into becoming very much like the rest of the world, going right-wing and against normal people and towards a more and more controlled society. So, well, what happened was that, like I said, I left I used to work as a journalist. I left my job and I moved to Stockholm to try and see if I, on a close distance, could get to the truth of the Palme assassination, because it was very obvious early on that what we were being fed did not make any sense at all, that there was another truth behind the scenes. So what I did was I went to Stockholm, I moved there, I started driving a bus, I cleaned toilets, I worked in warehouses, anything to keep myself fed and at the same time focused to find out what happened. So I spent years there, and I joined with a small group of private people. They were called the private detectives, privatspanarna. It was a group of mostly elder men, former lawyers, policemen, custom officers, any type of, many different types of life. They came from everywhere, and all of them, the thing that they had together was this sadness and sorrow for seeing what is happening to our country, and nobody is reacting. So what I did was that very early on, I discovered that there are two ways to go if you really want to go look for the truth. Either you go big time and you need the spotlight on you big time to use that as some kind of a security thing, so that if something happens to you, then it will just enforce what you have said. And so they would back off trying to hurt you. Or the other option, go under the radar, go totally stealth, and at that point I was Mr. Absolute Nobody, so I didn't really have an option, and I started very early seeing that there was a lot of so-called accidents, suicides, very fast developing cancer cases. Once you started pushing towards the truth, something ugly happened. So I thought, whoa, this, I need to take it easy here, because it's almost, and I feel to this very day, it's like walking around in a minefield, and you never know if you stepped on a mine until it's too late. It doesn't explode when you step on it. It's once you relax and you withdraw. And well, a lightning from the sky. Okay. Anyway, it's only when you take a step back, but you think you're okay and everything, that's when it happens. Very often, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, you have a visit, and it's not a very pleasant one. And from being fine, suddenly you commit suicide because apparently you were very depressed, or you were found drowned, fully dressed, or shot had committed suicide by shooting yourself in the back of the head, or similar things. There's many. I have a whole chapter in my book called Coup d'etat in slow motion, or Statskupp i slow motion. A whole chapter it's just focused on suicides, accidents, death, some of these things. Because once you start digging into these major assassinations, you will see that they are actually connected. It's the same power elite that now people are waking up to see what is going on in our world. Now it's very obvious on a global scale. Earlier, when I started, it was very hard to see what was going on, and very few people were aware of it. So that's the background.
That's the background. Did you experience these things happening very close to you, and did you feel at some point that you were in severe danger?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very, very sad when you look at what's going on, because when you, at least before the internet came forward strongly, at that time when I started, if you knew too much, or if you were finding out too much, you were one person and you were easy to get rid of. So if you disappeared, that was problem solved. Nowadays it goes so fast out on the internet, so they have a lot more problems trying to suppress the information, which is wonderful. But when I started, it was totally different. And unfortunately, in this group of people, there were two. There was one. His name was Fritz G. Pettersson. He was the central person in this small group of private people. And there was another one. He was a taxman. His name was Ingmar. And what happened was that this Ingvar, he was found, he kept pushing for more information from the official investigation. I'll go back into how these templates are made, and it's very obvious that the official investigation is actually part of the assassination itself in these big cases. So it's very dangerous to confront these forces, and this was, both these people had a bit too much of an ego and no feeling for this minefield that I'm talking about. And so Ingvar Heimel, unfortunately, his head was smashed in the subway. It was called an accident, but he was taken to one hospital. He was recuperating, and then suddenly he was moved to another less well-equipped hospital where complications started, and he died after that. It took us almost a year to get the autopsy report out. We could not get the report out, which is very often a sign of that there's something fishy going on. And once we got this autopsy report, it talks about it not as an accident, but that the injury was forced by some heavy object, meaning it's exactly the way it's spelled out, is that he was hit with something in the head. And Fritz, he went in for a normal checkup, and he came out with a very fast growing cancer that took out the parts of his brain very early, his ability to talk and so on. And it's not my conclusion that these two were assassinations or murders. It was a very high-ranking police officer that was actually the man who was first on the site when Olof Palme was Gösta Söderström, Commissioner Gösta Söderström. And he was standing up for what actually happened. I can go back into later. His role in the whole thing was that by the time he arrived to the site of the assassination, when he came there, the official alarm hadn't even gone off, and there were already police cars at the site, meaning that these police cars, all with very right-wing Nazi police officers, some of them that didn't even belong to that part of the Stockholm, were already there before the official alert had even gone out, meaning that these people knew what happened and were involved in the assassination itself. And he spent his whole life standing up trying to expose what had happened, and his whole career was smashed, and a very sad and crushed person. He was a beautiful guy, a very brave, and I dedicated my book to him for his bravery. So I had two friends who was murdered around me, and I had a visit at home. One day when I came home, I lived in the outskirts of Stockholm, not far from one of the police officers that was involved in the assassination. So it was very scary also since I knew so much about these suicides and so on, that when I started to really see who was involved and seeing that I was living closely to them and seeing how they operated, it was very scary. When I one day came home, I locked up, I opened my door, and furniture had been rearranged. There was nothing missing, there was nothing but books in the shelf had changed place, the table was turned around, my toothbrush was in the kitchen. And this is a way that both the mob and these forces they go in, if you have alarms, whatever they have, they just bypass them. They go in, they change around stuff, they can unscrew the shelves in your kitchen or something like that. And what they do is they make a statement. They say that we see you, we know what you're doing, and if you don't back off, you will have to pay dearly. And that was a scary experience. There was also a photo that I had in my photo album that they'd taken out. It was a photo my brother took just a day after the assassination. And on the photo, there was some of the first flowers on where the blood was, where he was shot. And somebody had put a sign, "Why is a true Democrat murdered?" And that photo was stuck under my bathtub in the drain, so that they had put water on it as well, so the colors had turned in, so it looked like blood that was running off the photo. So I got the message, and I backed off for a while. And then me and my girlfriend decided to leave the country. So we moved here to Spain. And this is where I finished the book. It's called Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. You can find it on my website, lightonconspiracies.com. And it's about, it's almost 1,000 pages with great detail, photos, names, details, maps, top secret documents, everything about how the whole thing was carried out, planned, who drove the getaway cars, all of these things. And I would just say that if the official story was true, that it was a one lone crazy guy, an alcoholic by the name of Christer Pettersson, who killed Olaf Palme because he mistook him for his drug dealer because they had the same kind of fur hat on, I would just say that I would be some kind of a it's 1,000 pages of absolute empty baloney. So I would say also what I say when people get this book, I would say please read it. Do not swallow it without criticism. Read it, make up your own mind, and if it makes sense, if you can see that this is actually true, then spread it. Don't buy into what I'm saying just because somebody else is putting it. I've also tried to write the book not as my opinion, my personal opinion. I'm just put the jigsaw in front of people, putting the pieces there so that you can judge for yourself.
So when you're talking about the mob, we are always talking about power, but we're also talking about money. So big money is at the stake here. And if you remember I think it was the second Godfather film where you remember Michael Corleone, he said to his wife that was leaving him, Kay, you must understand, because she was finding out what they were actually doing. And then he said to her, but Kay, in 1 year, this will all be legal. So and I always think of this as probably a very good description of what happened to the American society. And we are talking about primarily, I guess, British-American connections here, with deep ties into what happened, basically the whole 20th century, the big wars. The British call it the Great War, even the First World War. That didn't finish, which means that the Second World War had to come. And then after the Second World War, we see all these moves, and I know you have been deep into the Gladio operations also, and that Olaf Palme also was connected to that. And we have lately been studying for what one of the FBI whistleblowers, Sybil Edmonds, have been telling about that Gladio. Well, it is an ongoing operation. It never ended. So now they're talking about Gladio B. It almost has nothing to do with the original Gladio that was this idea of staying behind in case the Russians should come again. Now they are just like NATO, and a very aggressive force, doing terrorism attacks all over the world basically, but especially in the Middle East and Central Asia, and against Russia also, of course, and China and all these countries.
I would say it's a little tricky when you use the word mob. I would say a super criminal organization, a global corporation. I mean, more or less, they build it up like corporation nowadays. They don't see it as countries anymore. It's like almost like franchise. They move from country to country. But so I would say that instead of talking about countries like the States or England or France or Denmark and so on, we need to see a bit further up in the power pyramid. And that's where groups like the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Skull and Bones, the Committee of 300, these type of organizations are very, very important to look into who their members are, whose agenda they're serving. It's not at the top of the pyramid. I leave the top of the pyramid to other people that are more that knows more about these areas. I'm more on a street level because once you get into this world of conspiracies, not conspiracy theories, but conspiracies, it's massive. It is so big. So we need to sort of, one person can't take the whole thing on, so I take my part and I leave the rest for people. Anyway, but it's like with the Bilderberg group, for instance, you will see that what they do is they handpick people from, it's especially the Western world, the Bilderberg group. And what they do is they take, with a handful of people, you can control a country like Denmark or Sweden. You only need like 12, 15, 20 people, but in key positions. We're talking media, the legal system, the police force, the royal families, I don't know if I said the media, industry, communication, and these type of things. And once you got the key people, you can more or less control that country, forcing it slowly in the direction that you intend. And this is what they've done for decades. They've done it, and what their aim is to centralize the power to fewer and fewer people, fewer and fewer companies. And
Ola,
Sorry?
I have a question. I have an additional question. Actually, it's about now we are talking about Gladio and the elite, the international elite, and all these people behind them. And I would like to ask you, is there some kind of connection between Gladio and the World Anti-Communist League and the Säkerhetspolisen in Sweden? Because after the Palme assassination, there were some rumors about very close connections between right-wing SEPO officers and this world organization called WACL, World Anti-Communist League, and this connection to South Africa and Chile. You have described it in your book. Could you please say something about that?
No, it's very much interconnected.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is it's like a network of, all of it's right-wing organizations, extreme right-wing, and they intertangle and they spread out globally. So and they work for the same cause. So it's like the WACL or Stay Behind. They're very interlinked. You got SEPO, right-wing elements in SEPO for sure, right-wing elements in the Swedish police, the government, yes, for sure, they're very much entangled in this, and globally. It's globally. We have to see it on so when you see an assassination like Olaf Palme, it is not a Swedish murder. He was taken out from the highest level. The order was given from the highest level, and in my opinion, the reason why he was taken out was because he was a member of the elite. He was part of the Bilderberg group, he was part of the Committee of 300, and so on. And he was playing a double play. He was a double-faced person. He was one person on the outside. I would call him almost a Trojan horse. They used him to push into enemy camp, and he was the one they sent to Cuba. He was the one they sent to Palestine. He was the one they sent to Nicaragua and so on, to become friends with the other side, the so-called enemy. And then once in there, he could expose them for the global elite, the powers of the global elite. So, but I can go into, it's a very, very difficult assassination to explain because it's so multi-layered. I was on Red Eyes Creations, and we did an almost 10-hour interview just on the Palme assassination, trying to sort out what actually happened. So I don't really want to go into a lot of details because, especially if I go into what I really think happened, it sounds like I was totally off my rockers. But once you build it up with 8 hours of
course, but
operation, building the foundation.
The connection. The connection between Palme and this Bofors case, where the Indian Prime Minister at that time, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, was assassinated later. Was that a direct connection between the assassination of Olaf Palme and the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi in India? Do you think so?
I don't know if there was a direct connection. What I do know is that he signed the biggest arms deals for Sweden ever with Rajiv Gandhi just before he was assassinated, and that I do not know about the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, but I do know that there were the whole Bofors scandal. included bribes on a mind-blowing scale. I mean, we're talking sums that are just, you can hardly count the zeros. And Rajiv Gandhi was in that whole game, and he was taken out once again by a so-called lone crazy woman or guy or whoever it was that took him out. Doesn't matter. I feel very strongly that that was part of the whole.
At the funeral,
I would like,
at the funeral, Palme's funeral. Sorry, at Palme's funeral, we saw Rajiv Gandhi participating. He was actually one of the most beloved persons at that very big funeral with all these head of states. I remember that Rajiv Gandhi was one of the highest persons at his funeral, and maybe he was assassinated because of these political connections between the Social Democrats of Sweden and the Congress Party of India, also because of Indira Gandhi later. Earlier, was one of the leading political personalities when it comes to the non-aligned movement. And of course, Sweden is not a full member of the non-aligned movement, but Olof Palme was a very big supporter, officially, so to speak, of that movement, as you already have told. So it was just a comment. Yeah.
I don't want to go into that because I don't know enough to say it. I know there are very strong links between these things, but since I prefer only to talk about the things I know about. Mm-hmm. I would very much like to go back into the Stay Behind thing, if that would be okay.
Yes.
But Stay Behind, just like you say, was created in 1947 by the National Security Council and other small groups. And just like you said, the intention was to make a secret like ghost army in all different NATO countries, where they would create a network of small groups, like for 6 to 10 people, connected to each other with radio connections, and they had weapon depots, fuel depots, food, radio equipment, guns, all of these things spread out over the whole country. And this is part of, as when you become a member of NATO, this is one of the things that you need to do, otherwise you will not be allowed in. So what they did was they created this whole ghost army that nobody knew about. That would be, and like you said, it was the case of if there was an invasion from the east, then the whole resistance movement would already be in place, so that they could just boom, defend the country while the royal family and the top politicians got out, was transported to London, and then from London the whole resistance could be directed. But what happened was that the threat of the Soviet Union becomes so quickly deflated, even though they kept pumping us with the Cold War, but there wasn't really a threat from the East anymore. So then they had this massive ghost army, lots of highly skilled, very hardened, most of them right-wing military people and security people and so on. So they came up with what was called the strategy of tension. It was a CIA operation called the strategy of tension, and what they wanted to was to inflict fear in modern society so that the population would ask for more and more militarized protection from so-called terrorists. So what they started was to inflict fear on normal people's lives. They had to hit them, like in supermarkets, train stations, subway stations, bus transport, football stadiums, whatever. Many of these were carried out. The Red Brigade, these different so-called terrorist fractions were backed up by this Stay Behind movement, or Gladio, which is also called. Every single country has its own name for Stay Behind. The Swedish name was Stay Behind. The Italian name, which was the name that was used generally, was Gladio. And it's the old Roman gladiator sword. And it was first in 1991, I think it was, when there was a lawyer in Italy called Felix Casson who discovered this network. He through one of his clients, he was made aware of that it existed, and he just couldn't believe it. But so he started digging, and in the end, it created a massive scandal where I think there was about 10,000 people involved in Italy, both in the network, but also way up on the highest level of the government. And then that scandal spread across Europe, and Belgium, Holland, you name it. And also it was exposed that this thing existed in Sweden. Remember, Sweden was a neutral country. I would say neutral in one of these very obvious times, not neutral ever, I would say. But it's been like a sleeping member of the NATO. And one of the things that Olaf Palme did was also, he came from a very rich background, very right-wing, upper-class background. And his first jobs and so on was at the Defense Department, working for secret operations, and I mean almost like a spy, but for the Defense Office. He was also sent to Eastern Bloc countries and things like that. And then it came to a point where Tage Erlander, that was the former Prime Minister of Sweden, who was also a Bilderberger, he called him in, or I'm not sure how it happened, who called him in, but at that point, suddenly, from being a very right-wing politician, he turned very left. He became a social democrat. And they say that it was because he hitchhiked around in the States and he saw the poverty. Suddenly he got a soft heart and, oh my God, we need to take care of each other, and totally turned around. And from that point on, he was a social democrat and working for the equal, the equality of different class levels and so on. I would say when you start studying him and what he was involved in from very early on, he was playing a double faced game. He was working for the bankers, for the elite. You will see that when he made his statement for instance, in 1968, when he stood up as the only, as far as I know, the only Western politician that was standing up against the atrocities done in Vietnam by the US Army and so on. He was the only one that stood up and walked together with the ambassador of North Vietnam in a demonstration there. Really, it's like more or less giving the States the finger. But when you look back in history, and also when he started, he went out in media saying, I think it was after one of these major massacres in Vietnam, and he was saying very, very strong words against the States and so on. When you see what happened historically, after these things, after the demonstration, after this interview, he went straight to the bankers and said, "Don't worry, this is just a game for the masses. I won't let you down. We'll just continue as before," and so on. And he was the inviting person for several Bilderberg meetings in Sweden and so on. So he was not the one that people think that he is now. That whole thing started the second the shot was fired. There was this whole mass, how should I say, advertisement machine that started giving him wings overnight. He turned into a saint from being. I've never been into politics. I'm only after the truth, and I think politics is a lot of empty words saying exactly what you want to hear, and then they do whatever they want behind the scene anyway. So I've never voted, and I did not like Olaf Palme particularly either. So the reason why I spent so many years trying to find out what actually happened and who killed him and so on was in the search of truth, not to make him a saint or put him down in any way. But it's just during these 30 years, I found a very, very different picture of him than I thought before. And he was also one of the key members when it came to building up the Swedish Stay Behind movement. And also the building that he was shot outside is the so-called Skandia house. Skandia is a Swedish insurance company. It was created by his granddad, and it was called Thule, Thule, to start with. That is exactly as Thule Gesellschaft before Hitler. The whole thing that is connected with Hitler, some of it was named Thule. And when you look at the connections between the Palme family. It's incredible. His whole family tree is filled with extreme Nazis. I mean, his uncle on his mother's side was tried for crimes against humanity for his connection with IG Farben, and he was one of the people tried in Nuremberg. And but also he also had connections with the Dulles brothers, Alan and John Foster Dulles. They were two brothers, lawyers, that had a lawyer firm, and they were sent out by the elite, going in, and they were part of backing the whole Hitler war machine, and sponsoring IG Farben and so on. And then after the Second World War, Alan Dulles was very central in Operation Paperclip, where they exported all of these Nazis. They left some behind in Nuremberg that had to take the fall, and the rest of the guys that got out, I mean, in the thousands, to the States and to South America, building up the so-called OSS, which later turned into the CIA. They were part of building up NASA. They were part of building up the whole thing that we're now facing. And one of the other key members, I just want to say that Alan Dulles was a guest in Olof Palme's home when he was a child. You know, it's incredible when he was growing up. And one of the other key people that were part of funding Hitler, the Hitler war machine, I'm not saying that he was the one paying himself, but he was the one that funneled the funds into the Hitler war machine, was Prescott Bush, which is the grandfather or the father of George Bush, the two George Bushes. So we see the same families. There's a small little group of families that are so involved in these things. And later, Alan Dulles was part of the JFK assassination. He was part in the whole investigation after the Warren Commission. He was a member there, and the whole thing. He was fired by JFK, and part of looking into the assassination, absolutely covering the whole truth up. So,
which fits very well with the concept of both the mob, which is connection of families. And it fits very, very well with the Roman concept, because Rome, what was that? It was built with powerful families, often fighting each other, but sometimes also, a mobster would often recognize another mobster because he's like me. So why not be interrelated unless they go against me? And it's also very hard to get around the Nazi connection, of course, that goes way, way back. Sweden, I believe, is one of the countries, although, as you said, it's neutral. It has a, compared to Denmark, for instance, much deeper Nazi root in their society. And after the Second World War, I believe that the Swedish police was not like the Danish, for instance, was much more cleaned up, and these people were thrown out. I believe in Sweden it did not happen. One thing I would like to ask you about, because we are seeing a whole scheme playing out now, especially in Southern Europe, or should we say the northern part of Europe attacking the southern part of Europe. With some financial terrorist attacks, I would call them, and it's and there is one pattern here that I kept wondering about. Countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, as you would know a lot about, Portugal, are all old fascist dictatorships, meaning that there would be a very rich, powerful elite that would, as a kind of parasitic entity, live in these countries, making them vulnerable to an attack from, for instance, the European Central Bank and the IMF going in.
True. I just want to say that this is the first time I heard what you're saying. It's really interesting. I never made that connection with a historical fascist.
And Argentina also, because they exported the southern model, the Latin model, without even changing the names.
Most of the Latin American countries.
Yeah. They are modeled after the southern European fascism. So well.
But I would say that it's almost like what you're describing is once again like a Trojan horse that is left behind. and then it's or sleeping agent, and then once you need it, it's activated. And I would say when you look at the royal families, when you look at the Bilderberg members, who are the members in these countries and so on, and how the global elite, especially the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, these are the two, when it comes to financial weapons, these are the two institutes that they've created and that they use. I think it's a very interesting observation you made there with this fascist background. I also think that one of the things is they try out their different agendas on like limited areas, you know, where to see what type of problems they will have. I think Sweden is one of the countries they test out some areas, because the Swede normally is very lame when it comes to react. You know, like I would say, if you ban beer in Denmark, you would have a revolution on your hand. If you make a Swede angry, you would maybe get a bumper sticker saying, "I am pissed off," but with small letters. You know, so Sweden is a country like Spain. If you try things here, they get angry, you know, and they will start reacting. But so they try out different areas. When it comes to Sweden, I think it's with the technology, you know, like with chipped passports, with things, but also the digital currency they're trying out now. Sweden is getting very fast into a totally digital currency country where there's no real money. There's many banks, I've been told, that don't deal with money anymore. You can't go in with real money anymore, and they will say, we're sorry, we can only deal with your credit card and stuff. So they're trying it out there, making it really popular in Sweden, and because Sweden has a good reputation as well, then they can push it on other countries. Look at this beautiful example. Oh, everybody's so happy, and look how well everything is working. It's so clean, it's so nice, and so on. When it comes to what they did on Cyprus and Greece, I would say especially like Cyprus, when they just seized people's bank accounts. Look, they surrounded the island with warships or discrete, you know, military power, and then they just said that was, of course, it had nothing to do with it. There was an exercise going on, so they were not connected in any way. I mean, how can you even think the thought? It was there, but they were there, very visible, and then they just said, okay, let's turn off the bank accounts and see what happens. Are we going to have a riot? Are we going to have a revolution? But it's on a controlled space, you know. And so they had some problems, but they got the general idea, not a major problem.
And very,
so they just tried.
Very soon after, I believe there was a remark from a high-level Belgian member of the European Union that said, "Okay, we did it. We have now a new strategy from the Cyprus strategy," meaning this is. It came out of his mouth. How stupid can you be? Right. But on the other hand, he said it very clearly. So be aware, we can do it again, and we will do it again. And I believe what the Icelanders did was very, very brave. They actually said no.
But we also have to talk about when it comes to Iceland and Cyprus. It's also very interesting to see how the European Union actually are attacking offshore Russian banking oligarchs, because they actually had very strong connection both to the Icelandic economic elite and to the Cypriot economic elite as well. And I think actually much of the attacks against Iceland and Cyprus was actually an attack against Russian economic interests already at that time. So now we can see that it is actually a new development because of the attacks upon Cyprus and Greece, where a lot of Russian oligarchs have their money. They are now actually moving the European Union's political interests into Eastern Europe, deep into Eastern European area, as the Ukraine, Kiev, with this coup d'etat in Kiev recently. And it is actually a kind of a further expansion of a European Union semi-fascist strategies to strangulate Eastern Russian political economic interests. So we can see there's a clear-cut connection between the attacks upon these southeastern European countries and the new policies in the Ukraine, actually. So I think there's a lot of interesting developments going on now when it comes to European Union foreign policies. Also, when it comes look at the Baltic states, we can see that actually Sweden, as usual, because of the history and the close the close geographical situated country like Sweden, is actually very much involved deeply involved in Baltic political affairs. Also, you had these good, interesting documents about Estonia. Could you maybe say something about the Estonian affair?
Could I just say that I think to understand many of the things that are going on, it's really, really important to study history, study where these organizations like the European Union came from, who created them. Was it normal, honest people? No, it was members of this global elite. Who created the World Health Organization? Who created the World Wildlife Fund? Who created these things? Same people, and they're created there to give an illusion of democracy, an illusion that but they're used against us. I mean, the agenda now is rape, kill, and plunder. That's it. And so they're using the European Union, the United Nations, the NATO, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. These are 5 of the major weapons. I mean, we're talking weapons. They're destroying us with them. And so when you say that now the European Union are starting to go to the Baltic, it's like they've sent a ship there to destroy the countries from the inside, no, from the outside, but under the flag of democracy and freedom and we're coming here to help you. Absolute not true. They're there to destroy country by country by country. So that's a very strange.
Yeah, but the I think Klaus was referring to the sinking of the Estonian ship that is connected also probably. What would you say that there could also be a kind of Gladio operation going on here, and there's a close connection, of course, to the Swedish. I believe that Swedish politicians were even involved in the cover-up of the whole affair.
Once again, we're back to a massive conspiracy. What is said to be an accident was very, very obvious quite early that it was not. There was so many strange things going on. And what happened with, I cannot say that I know the truth about the Estonian. I know a lot about it. And what I know for sure is that there was a ship that was blown up with explosives. And I know for one thing for sure as well, that there was a massive NATO operation going on, a naval operation going on with 15 different countries involved at that time. The same started the day before, or the same day in 1994. I think it was I can't remember the name at the moment. But the thing was that these ships, I mean, big warships with all type of super high equipment, was in Kattegat and on the west side of Norway. They could very easily have come to the rescue for this for this ship. But what happened instead was that this ship left. This is, like I say, it's a very complicated thing. But one of the things that happened was that it was delayed at departure, and the last 2 vehicles that came aboard, exactly the very last one, was military trucks escorted by people in uniform. And it's become quite open now that on these 2 trucks were highly radioactive material and weapons. There's some experts that claim that they were part of the mirrors for some satellites with very radioactive batteries. And the thing was that the whole reason for instead of rescuing all the bodies from the ship, it's only down on 60 odd meters, so it's very easy to go down there. The whole reason why they wanted to cover the whole ferry in concrete. I don't know if you know that in Denmark, but
totally
they
absurd.
want to make like a mausoleum of this ferry out in the middle of absolute nowhere, because they said, but otherwise sports divers would go down and steal bottles of whiskey. Okay, make up your own mind. We put in $1 million to cover it open, and the cost of one bottle of whiskey is like a few dollars. Does it make sense? Not really. And but what I believe happened was that the whole was part of a military smuggle route. When the Baltic states were freed from Russia, they started dismantling, with Swedish help, they started dismantling the whole weapon and military, all the installations and military factories and so on. And there was one submarine base in Paldiski, not far from on the Estonian coast. And like I say, Sweden was there, and also there was an Estonian colonel that worked for the American army for many years. And then when Estonia became free, he went back to help to create the national army and so on. His name was Alexander Einzel. And what happened was that in this submarine base, some of this material was on, as far as I know, on these 2 trucks that was taken on board. What then happened was that on the way to Sweden, there were these explosions. About an hour after they left harbor, there were explosions on board the ship. And I don't know how much detail you want to go into.
Well,
but would you like details?
There's a lot of details, I know, and I know the German lawyer that defended all the people that were left, not left behind, but the relatives, that he did a lot of study into it, and well, we should maybe not go deeply into details here, because it is very, I believe, well documented by Michael Witte and Jutta Rabe from Der Spiegel, that the details about this. Do you see any connections to the, Klaus was mentioning the Ukraine activities right now? Have you looked into that? We have done a lot of research here, but no.
No, but what I would say is that one thing that I think is very interesting is when you see these major so-called terror acts. I'm talking about false flag operations at the moment. I'm talking like Operation 7/7 in London, the Madrid bombings, 9/11, Oklahoma City, and so on. One of the things that is very common in the way they carry them out, part of the template, is that they have a drill at the same time. A drill. It was the same in Oslo as well. Where there's a drill going on with exactly the same agenda, and then this drill halfway through suddenly go live, so that many of the people involved in the drill don't even know what's going on, that suddenly it's a live action thing. And with Estonia, there was exactly the same thing. There was a bomb drill going on, and with the exact same scenario that later happened. That was carried out the day before. And during the whole event, when it started sinking, and the radio traffic on the whole Baltic coast was shut down, so that the Mayday signals did not go out the way they should. And instead, the boat went down. Almost 1,000 people were killed. I mean, it was awful. And then afterwards, the people that were saved on board other ferries and so on, because the helicopters, that was delayed as well. And then the people that were rescued, they were treated almost like criminals. There were people in suits that they were not, they couldn't blend with other passengers. They were not allowed to call their relatives. They were really treated extremely badly from day one. And I just want to say that on this ship as well was a central group of policemen that was central in the Palme investigation. And in 1994, just before this happened, there was a lot coming out with parts of the assassination team being right-wing Swedish police officers, with elements from SEPO, the Swedish secret police, and government officials, including the global connection as well. I can go into great details who carried the assassination out and so on. But there were these revelations going on saying that it was an inside job, and that the investigation is part of the assassination as well. Now, these people in Serpo who would have known had they been part of it there was about 70 of them. 69 was on board on Estonia when this went down. They were on a conference and they went down. And the names of these people were mentioned, not the names, but the number of them that they were part of the Swedish police and so on, was mentioned just the first few hours after the accident. And then when you look through all the list of the dead people and so on, these names disappears. And also the number of the dead have changed a lot, and one of the numbers that keep repeating itself is 70 or 69 identities that are there and then they disappear. So I would just say, could it be that when you look at other big things, so-called terror acts, when they try to get rid of one person, they can do that with a car accident, a suicide, and so on. If they need to get rid of a group of people, they either do like in Poland, they stuff all of them in one plane or one helicopter, and then this poor helicopter has, there's no fuel or something like that, it goes down, everybody dies. But it's very obvious. So the way when they try to cover up, when they're going for one or more people, they put them on a plane, like with the Lockerbie disaster, where the actual target was Olof Palme's very close colleague, Bernd Carlsson, he had a lot of information on what had been going down, and the bomb has been traced to his briefcase in a small tape recorder that was supplied on the Heathrow airport and then put in. So that is the thing, they blow up an airplane, and with 272 passengers, it could be anyone that was targeted, making it very, very hard to find out the real reason.
So
now, if you have a group of 70 people, how could you cover it up so that nobody would notice it? You would need a major accident, a number of people to die at the same time, so that you would not observe that this centrally. I would say, look into this group. That is my strong. That would also explain a lot of the cover-up going on, because the Sweden was part of this weapon route. Illegal weapons route or arms smuggling route that was used with the Bofors as well. If you noticed, a few years earlier on, there was another ferry that went down called Jan Hevelius between Sweden and Poland, and that ship went down. It was, it turned upside down, and they left it there for quite a long time. Then it sunk finally, and nowadays, if you go down there, there's a hole the size of, I think it's 5 times 18 meters on the side. It's a massive hole cut open. And once again, they say, well, it's amateur divers. Okay, I would say that hole fits very much into some of the trucks that was on board that could be lifted out of this ship and would be also part of the smuggle route. I would also say that the truck drivers and so on, they have never been able to get money from the insurance companies and so on, which they would have had it been an accident.
So in your opinion, I never heard about that incident. In your opinion, that would be primarily a military operation, a mass assassination of people who would know too much?
I think that it was aimed to get rid of this central group of Swedish secret police members, and that they were not aware of that these 2 trucks were on board. I think that the ship was delayed. I think it was supposed to leave, and then somebody called and said, listen, stop, we need to get these 2 trucks on board. And these 2 trucks messed it up big time. Okay. And was a risk of exposing the whole military illegal arms smuggling route from Russia down through Sweden, through Poland and East Germany out into Europe, where they changed the papers, just like they did with all the Bofors thing. They had what they were called green and red countries, legal and illegal countries to export weapons to, because Sweden, beautifully enough as a neutral country. What the hell are they doing with an arms industry? You could ask yourself. But they're only allowed to export weapons to countries that are not in war, but only for defense. So they're called the green countries, the legal ones. But what they did was they exported it to these countries, and then they changed the papers so that they managed to make the origin of where they were manufactured. They changed it so that from the red country. So it's also, in East Germany, they let some of these train wagons filled with this type of military material. They just let it roll across the border, so that it wasn't transported. It was just downhill, and it just rolled across the border. These wagons came rolling down, and then they changed the papers in there. So nobody had smuggled them. They were rolling on their own. And then they ended up in Iran or other, killing people on Sri Lanka and other things like that. Awful stuff. But I would say that the reason for them blowing up was to shut down so that the truth of the Palme assassination, which is massive, it's right at the global elite, to cover that up, and then by mistake they managed to sink these military trucks. Had they not been aboard, they wouldn't have had all this trouble with the radioactivity, with military ships having to control the area to try and cover the whole thing in concrete. They wouldn't have had that, but these two, and there was one man called Igor Kristopovich who was working for the custom officers who spoke out about this, and boom, was shot just a few days later. So you make up your own mind.
Yeah. What is the connection, the South African connection to the Palme assassination, and how about the Pinochet regime in Chile? Was there a direct connection regarding the killing of Palme?
I would say very much a direct connection. If we go back in history, in the late 1950s, early 1960s, Dwight Eisenhower, the president, he approved of Richard Nixon, his vice president, to put together a team of skilled assassins. This was a group of former CIA operatives, high up, people like Ted Shackley, E. Howard Hunt, David Atlee Phillips, the controller of Lee Harvey Oswald, and several of the shooters in the JFK assassination and so on. And these CIA officers, what they did was they recruited a whole team of mostly exiled Cubans that had escaped from Cuba, and they were former military people, police officers from the Air Force and so on. Very brutal people, very skilled in killing. So they under the supervision of Richard Nixon, they created this team of assassins, and the man put there to funnel the funds from big corporations like Standard Oil, United Fruits, and also from oil tycoons and the military industrial complex. The man put in charge of funneling the funds to this group of assassins was a man called George Herbert Walker Bush. Okay. And this guy pops up everywhere. When you see from the 1950s all the way up, almost till today, this guy is central. And the Bush family, if you look at the background, he makes Hitler look like a schoolboy. It is unreal what this family has been involved in. Anyway, this team of assassins were firstly they wanted to use them to take out foreign leaders or whoever they had problems with globally. So they used them, the first task was to take out Fidel Castro, which they tried several times, but they failed. Then came the Bay of Pigs invasion, the failed one, and they got very much pissed off with JFK for multiple reasons. And what they did was they aimed this cannon, highly skilled cannon, at JFK. And when you look at Dealey Plaza, what actually happened there, many of the shooters, because he was totally surrounded by teams of assassins, it was not only triangular fire, there were loads of people shooting at him. And many of the shooters, many of the radio operators, many of the spotters came from Operation 40. Now, this group later was used as the Robert Kennedy assassination. Members of this Operation 40 was used to track down Che Guevara in Bolivia. Members of this Operation 40 was used. They were central, super central in the whole Iran-Contra scandal. They were part of the Watergate burglar. I mean, the people that were arrested there, 4 of them, members of Operation 40. They were all, after that, I mean, these people, they're called the grandmother of all operations because they've been used as the template to educate new people, new assassins, new torturers, and so on. So they were sent, some key people were sent down to Argentina in 1973, where they took out, Chile, when they took out Salvador Allende. They were part of killing him. They were also part of creating what was called Operation Condor, which was an operation that tracked down and killed opponents to the Pinochet regime that had taken over. Totally funded and supported by the CIA, Henry Kissinger, Operation 40. They're super central, George Bush in this as well. Then they were also sent to Vietnam, part of Operation Phoenix under William Colby, that was also part of creating the Stay Behind movement, and later the director of the CIA. And they were part, I just want to mention also, it just goes on and on. They were part of taking out Bob Marley. They were part of the when they tried to shoot Bob Marley. There was one man, I forgot his name now. But anyway, part of Operation 40, he was in Dealey Plaza, and he was one of the people that was put in charge of the hit team trying to take out Bob Marley, who was becoming a very, very strong political figure. Anyway, they were also part of killing Orlando Lettier and blowing him up in Washington, D.C. They were part of killing a very famous man in South Africa, Robert Smith. And one of the people that was recruited after the JFK assassination on a later scale, but part of the overtake of Salvador Allende, was a man by the name of Michael Vernon Townley. Now, this Michael Vernon Townley is super central in many assassinations in Europe and globally as well. And he was in Stockholm the night that Olaf Palme was shot. He was in Copenhagen just the day before, and later he was there, together with another key figure in Stay Behind, an Italian called the King of Terror. His name is Stefano della Chiai. He's admitted that he was part of the Olaf Palme assassination. They were both part of trying to kill Bernardo Leighton in Rome. Very similar assassination as the Olaf Palme assassination. And it just goes on and on. I got more people who were present in Dealey Plaza when the shots were fired at JFK that were in Stockholm 23 years later. It's the same people that they used again and again and again.
Also, the South African connection. How about that?
Yeah, I'm going.
Okay.
The South African connection was that the order of the assassination, as far as I've been able to find out, was given to a South African colonel by the name of Craig Williamson. In these operations, the people carrying them out on a street level had absolutely no idea where the order came from, how it was funded, why it was done. They don't care. And it's totally compartmentalized. They only know their little piece of the puzzle, so that they cannot turn a whistleblower and give the whole picture. It's always very chopped up like this. And the order, since it was very important not to be able to track it down back to the CIA or the Swedish SEPO or other, was given to a South African colonel called Craig Williamson. The reason it was given to him was that he had earlier on totally infiltrated the Swedish government. He was called a super spy, and he made up that he was a political refugee, and Sweden was embracing him as a hero, standing up towards the apartheid regime So he was taken in, and in the end he came as high up. So he was writing the speeches for people, not like Olaf Palme, but very close up, very close on that level. Then when he was exposed, he ran back to South Africa. He fled back and was put up very high up in the ranks. Anyway, so he was given the task to put together a hit team to take out Olaf Palme. And what he did was he recruited people from different countries, different backgrounds, without any apparent connections, so that if somebody like myself would start digging into it, it would just point all over the place. So what he did was that there was a small farm called Daisy Farm just outside Johannesburg. It looks like a little cute farm, and it's called Daisy Farm, but it was actually a death center, a torture center for the secret police in South Africa, where they brought people in and chopped them up and killed them and tortured them, you name it. But during 2-3 months, that was where they planned the whole Olaf Palme assassination and so on. And he got people in like the Rhodesian mercenary called Anthony White. He had another, one of his agents called Rian Stander. There was another guy called Peter... sorry, it's been a while since I've been in. But these three went up. They flew from South Africa up to Luxembourg, and then went in a car up and into Sweden. Then he recruited, or part of the Stay Behind. They used the Stay Behind network. They got, like I said, Stefano Della Chia. He flew in under a false identity as Henry Verle. He flew in there. Michael Van Townley came through Denmark up that way. You had a Norwegian mercenary called Olaf Christian Olstad, who met up with Craig Williamson before he was handed over a lot of money, and then he was part of this team as well. And then you had a backup of local support by right extreme police officers from the Norrmalm police station in Stockholm. That is the central police station that covers the castle, the government buildings, the major banks, and so on. And we're talking extreme right-wing police officers that were part of this whole thing, backing them up with logistics as weapon, cars, food, housing, and so on. So it's not South Africa as a country that is involved. He was recruited to put together a hit team. And so it's very important not to see countries here, but to see individuals and how they're connected.
Mm-hmm. But the American intelligence agencies, was they also involved in this? Was they a part of it? The men behind, or maybe even planning the assassination of Palme, or were they coordinated with the other?
No, it was coordinated. And this is also where, a few days before the assassination, there was a telegram sent from a man called Philip. I'm sorry, like I said, it's been a long time. He was a very close associate to George Bush Sr. And he sent a telegram to one of the major people in the P2 Lodge, the Masonic Lodge in Italy. No, it was the other way around. It was sent to him. And the telegram said, "Please tell our good friend Bush that the Swedish tree will be felling." Now, his name was Palme. They always call him Olaf Palme, not Olaf Palme.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of speculations about this telegram. And George Bush Sr. is very, very central in this assassination, I would say. Mm-hmm. You also got elements of the Mossad, and they all interact like this. When you go up in the power pyramid, there's no difference between the Mossad, the MI5, the MI6, the CIA, the NSA, the Swedish secret police, and so on. They're all interconnected. On a lower level, not. But when you get up to the top, by now, they used to be separated, but now they're all working together. So it's not Mossad, it's not the CIA, it's not BOSS, it's not SEPO, and so on. It's connected. So
maybe even the assassination of Makarios, the leader of Cyprus in 1974. It was also a conglomerate, a coordinated action against this leader. I think also so with Israeli and American, of course, intelligence agencies and others, Europeans too. So I think it's the way they're doing it. They're coordinating their actions in that way, and also when they are killing or making coup d'états in Latin America, for instance, with the United Fruit Company working in Guatemala back in the early 1950s when they assassinated and made a coup d'état in Guatemala against the president. What was his name? Jacobo Arbenz, I think it was. Yeah. So they also connected to it, of course. United Fruit.
Yeah, the people that took out Javens was the people from Operation 40. They chose E. Howard Hunt, Ted Shackley, and David Atlee Phillips because they were hardened veterans. They were part of the coup or when they took out Mossadegh in Iran. When you look at it, the history, they're using the same people. And I heard an interview once with somebody involved, and he said, but how is it possible that you use the same people? And the guy answered, but why change a winning team? Yeah. They're the best, they're doing great, why should we change it? And this is exactly what you see. And I just want to point out also that lately I've made an interview and I've become friends with George Bush Sr.'s former private assassin. His name is Chip Tatum. He was a deep cover agent for the CIA for 25 years. He was a black helicopter pilot. He was a black op assassin, and he was part of a very super secret team called the Pegasus, where there was George Bush Sr.'s private team for assassinations. They flew at least 17 missions where they took out people right, left, and center. And then he became a whistleblower. And when you talk to him, or when I've discussed these type of things, I've got confirmation on every single thing I've been saying, but from the inside. So it's not. I'm not taking things out of the open air. Sometimes there's difference in the understanding of what happened, but also he was very much compartmentalized as well. Like in all operations, he was kept very, very. He was only given the exact knowledge he needed, not the big picture. So it's very, very interesting for someone like myself to now get on the inside and get also become friends with these people, because it's very mind-blowing to speak to an assassin and at the same time a very gentleman, a very kind, like a father, a family man, and at the same time the things that he's done. And at the same time, I really admire his courage for becoming a whistleblower, and it's very, for me at least, because it's hard to see. It's so easy when you see monsters and good guys, but when they start blending, this is the thing. And many of these people were recruited at a young age, and suddenly they ended up like in shark waters, not knowing how to get out. Mm-hmm. So it's a confusing time.
Ola, do you think, we are talking about a very pyramidal system that are controlled from a central hold, and there are of course always inner circles, and as you say, the lower you get, the broader you get, the more compartmentalized it is. But my guess would be, having never been inside any of these things here, that there would be quite a lot of people given the chance to do like the guy you were talking about here, to actually look into his own past, to actually regret and actually say, I could live another life. But when you are a young boy and you are addressed by the Hells Angels, saying, "Now, little friend, we have an offer for you," and the first time it's free, but soon you will find yourself woven into a net of basically your own deeds. You are compromised. But given the chance, would you say that there's a lot of people who would, the day the whole cabal would eventually start to crumble, they would say, let's get the hell out of here. We don't want to do this anymore, and we will put our knowledge and our forces in the hands of not the elite any longer.
I tell you, I think what you describe is very standard procedure. Like people, especially now, you see this whole network of pedophile gangs, of sex parties, of sex with minors and homosexual activities, and so on. It's coming out more and more that this has been going on a high level in, I would say, more or less all countries. And this is, we had the so-called brothel scandal in Sweden, where there were hundreds of politicians and police officers and whoever were involved. Just like J. Edgar Hoover, he used to, like, they arranged for these parties and other things that would compromise you, and you're invited into this brotherhood. You are like one of the big boys now, and come on, everything is great. You suddenly you're being treated so good, and then, like these sex parties, you get involved, you do things you normally wouldn't do, maybe with minors or homosexual activity. And what you do not know is that it's all being filmed and registered. It can be worse things than that. They spend a lot of time, like J. Edgar Hoover, like I would say like maybe 70% of the power of the FBI was to dig out dirt on his, the people in power, so that he had them by the balls. And I would say that this is what has happened in most countries as well. I think this is what happened in Sweden with a man called Ebbe Carlsson, where they arranged for these parties, and then they made, so that if somebody stands up and say, listen, I'm not part of this anymore, they will have a lot of ammo to say, back down, shut up, and stay in line. So I would also say that what you're saying is very, very up to date, that this is the time, in my opinion, the reason why there's all these false flag operations, why it's speeding up so much now, is because they're feeling that there's an incredible awakening going on, and they can't stop it anymore. More and more people are popping up on a daily basis saying, hold on, something so wrong is going on, and I can start to see it. And also, like, there was the War Tribune in Kuala Lumpur a few years ago, where George Bush Jr., Tony Blair, Dick Cheney, and other people were tried for crimes against peace, crimes against humanity. They didn't turn up, of course, because they're cowards. But they were sentenced. It was with international judges and everything. The whole case was tried. They were sentenced, and the sentence was given to the War Tribune in Hague, where it still is. Now, on the 31st of March, the English Queen Elizabeth II of Windsor and the former Pope were called. They were subpoenaed to court in Brussels, accused of child genocide. I mean, we're talking heavy accusations.
And you're talking about the Kevin Annan initiative.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's going on at this very moment. This trial is going on. So the thing is that, in my opinion, the ship is going down, and the rats are leaving the ship. Like the Queen of Netherlands. My God, it's coming too close. I'm out of here. So she jumped the ship. The Pope said, "Shit, this is getting too close." Jimmy Savile and all of these things. I'm out of here. So he jumped, but now he's being tried anyway. And I also think that when you see the amount of false flag operations, the speed, they used to do it like slowly, what they call the stepping stones, a little here, a little there, a little, so we wouldn't notice. But now when it's falling apart, they're trying to speed it up. Like the dragon is dead, but the tail is still, throwing like this. So I often talk directly to people in uniform. I often in these, I don't know how many interviews I made, but I speak directly to the elite. And if that would be okay, I would very much like to do that here as well.
Please.
I now speak to members of the elite. I just want to say to you that I can totally understand if you are very scared. I would be so if I had done what you have done, if I had conducted history in the way very cowardly, the way you have organized all of these things, put so much pain and injury to so many people. It's time for you to understand that we see you. We are not buying this crap anymore. We see whatever you try, we are aware of it. The spotlight is on you. You have been able to carry this out for decades because you've been hiding in the shadows. Now the times have changed and the spotlight is being aimed at you. So I would say, the sooner you understand that the game is over, the sooner you understand that the game is over and have the courage to stand up in truth, expose what you have been part of, say if you feel ashamed of it, come from the depth of your heart saying, I'm so sorry for what I have been part of creating. I'm deeply, deeply sorry. The more you come from your heart, the easier the process of healing will be. The more you avoid it, the more you stand back, the more cowardly you fear this, the more you fear us, the colder the embrace will be, the more courage, the more brave you are, and stand up now at this time in history when it really counts. When you are the ones that will be looked upon as the brave ones, the one that really had the balls to stand up and say, this is what I've been part of. Total transparency. I am so sorry. I will take my punishment, whatever it is, but I step forward as a man or a woman in truth, dignity, and show it. We will embrace you. The more of a coward you are, the ship is going down. It's just a matter of time. The choice is yours. And I would very much recommend you to find the courage. I know it's scary. And I know that you will see, but oh my God, if normal people knew what I've been part of, they will lynch me. There is a possibility of that. There is, especially if you look at history, the way you created it. But I, for one, do not believe in revenge. I do not believe in violence. I do not believe in hatred. I believe in truth. Truth and compassion, forgiveness. But first, transparency. Courage to stand up and take the responsibility for what you have been part of creating. We are tired and fed up, and the point of the tipping point is it has happened. You cannot stop it anymore. So I welcome you. It was a message for the members of the elite. If I can please speak to members of the police.
Yes.
Or members or people in uniform. Please, I beg from the bottom of my heart, I beg you, please inform yourself about whose agenda you are serving. You are being duped into believing that you do the right thing, that you go to other countries to fight for freedom, democracy, all these beautiful things. It is absolute bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. You have been brainwashed into thinking that what you are doing is the right thing, instead of understanding that you are being totally used by a gang of banksters with no compassion, no loyalty to you, whatever. You are an empty uniform. As soon as you don't serve their purpose, they will get rid of you. Look at what's happening with all the war veterans in the States and so on. They're being exposed to all kinds of experiments and horrible things. They think they come back as heroes, having maybe got their legs blown off, or they soiled their soul by doing all these atrocities, killing children, women, all of these things. They come back and think, I'm finally home. What happens? They're not even given a house. They're not even given, they're giving like war hospitals where they need, nobody even helps them change diapers. They're being treated like absolute crap with no respect and so on. This is the same for you. If you're from Denmark, if you're from Sweden, once again a neutral country, how the hell did you get into war? I would like to ask. And Denmark as well, what are you doing in countries like Iran and Afghanistan, and these, you're killing, the I can't express in words what you are. Hired killers, your brutal weapons of death used from this tiny little group of elite that are absolutely mad when you look at it. They're destroying everything. They're destroying nature. They're trying to kill us all off. They have an agenda that is just poof, and you in uniform are the one that are defending them from us. Police officers, if you are the ones that are going to protect the Bilderberg meeting, or if you are the one that are walking around or installing surveillance cameras, looking at us, trying to figure out what we are doing, instead of looking, who told you to install these cameras? Who are watching? Why are you watching us? Why are the airports looking like Fort Knox nowadays? It's based on false flag operation, absolute bullshit. There's no real... After 30 years, I don't even know if there is such a thing as a real terrorist. Every single time I look into a so-called terror act, it's funded, sponsored by the FBI or the CIA or other agencies. They have trained them, they have equipped them with bombs, they have done, it's inside jobs every single time. And you, even if it's as an electrician in FEMA camps, or the Danish version, I don't know the Danish name of that. Most countries now have got these so-called organizations in the case of disaster, or indirectly it's in the case of uprising. You are being trained to take care of us, not them to control us, to hurt us, to terrorize us, to shut up and stay down and not stand up for what we are. Beautiful human beings with values that is divine. You have become the weapons of terror against your own. It's incredible. And I could just, once again, from the bottom of my heart, please wake up, get out, understand what is going on. If you put down your weapons, or if you just say, I have sworn loyalty to the population, I'm a police officer of the population, I will defend the population. You're doing a great job. Excellent. I totally honor you. If you defend this mad gang of mobsters terrorizing the rest of us, it's totally disgrace. And if you study history, I must warn you, if you look at history, look at what happened in the Second World War, in the Nazi regime, which is very similar to what is going on now with the New World Order. It's the same agenda, just in a more modern form. How does people look at the people of Gestapo? How does people look back on history to people that work for up there? The SS troops, how are they looked upon? You will be looked upon in the same way. So I can just say, inform yourself. Don't trust what I'm saying. Don't trust what anyone else is saying. Look into it. The more you learn, the more you will say, oh my God, how the hell did I end up in this situation? And when you wake up, maybe you cannot leave your uniform. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying do the right thing. Ask your heart. When somebody is saying, as a soldier, shoot that guy, shoot that child, it's an order. It is your finger. It is you that decides to do it or not. It's your soul that will have to carry this for the rest of your living days and onwards. It is you who have to take the responsibility, just as I have to take my responsibility. You have to do it. So for the love of God, before you do any more of these things, back out, wake up. It's painful to wake up. It takes balls. It is scary. We will embrace you. I tell you, we will embrace you. Don't fear us. And that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Ole. I thank you for your what I would call a prayer for both the people on high positions and the people in not so high positions. And I also thank you for this message that lastly here was for the Danish people. We are a growing number of people that are thinking just this way. What the bleep are we doing in running behind the ass of the big guys? What do we expect to gain from that? And how will our children and children's children look upon a country that where the population also now has blood on their hands because they passively have accepted what was going on? There was some protest at the Iraq war, but it faded out. And today, after 9/11, I would say the people that think they can think, the intelligentsia of Denmark, are now so compromised and asleep that we should not expect many good things from them. But wake up and come to your senses, because it's now that we have to do this. And well, we have a history here in Denmark, and we have a former president, as we all know, that is now a general secretary of NATO. And I'm sure we could talk a lot about his past also, and being compromised. And I'm sure he is compromised in many ways that will keep him doing exactly what he's doing. But I think the Danish people should, it's time now to do with these guys as the British did with Tony Blair. They pushed him away and say, we know who you are, we don't want you any longer. And of course he kept doing his stuff all over the world right now. But thank you, Ole, very much.
Yeah, very much.
And maybe this is a good place to round up this interview. And there's a lot of information. And could you please again tell the listeners and viewers where they can find even more information from you?
Yeah. Well, my website is called Light on Conspiracies. It's a very specially picked name, because I really truly feel that the thing is that we need to go in and expose the darkness with light. It's a struggle between the darkness and the light. It's a struggle between so-called good and bad, so-called evil and good. And we are in my opinion, a very, very exciting time, because like the native Indians say, that this is a time where the strongest of the strong souls have been asked to come down to us. We have been selected by our ancestors to come forward in this time to show ourselves brave and stand in pride and truth and honesty, like the light warriors we are. So I would say this is not a time to sit and pick your nose and change the channel to look at another X Factor or football game. This is a time to once again stand up in truth and see what is going on. You are being challenged, and if you do not do anything, you are part of the silent crowd that allows it to happen. And this is not the way to go. You see, once again, check out history, what happened with Jews and other groups of countries. It's only by us allowing it. This is the whole thing, this so-called elite group that I would like to call something totally different. I would call them the minority or the lightless or something like that. Not the elite, that's what they call themselves. Or the cowards, that would be an even better words. I would say that they're only like a couple of thousand, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 or something like that. We are 7 billion people. So why on earth are we allowing it? We should just be laughing and turning our backs to them and go and have fun somewhere else, to let them control us and be part of it. Because the mad thing is, we are controlling ourselves. Can you believe it? It's unreal. We are controlling ourselves and allowing them, because they sit just like in what's the name? The Yellow Brick Road, The Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Exactly. The whole thing is, it's so symbolic that we're coming in there, we're being scared by this massive voice saying, I'm powerful, and you are weak. And then this brave little girl does not back down. She could have been scared as everyone else and left the castle, but instead they find out that there's somebody behind the curtain, And who's behind the curtain? A tiny little old man with a microphone and a massive amplifier. This is the thing. This is exactly how they're doing. They're using media as this massive amplifying, saying, you are weak, turn another channel, do not think that you have any power whatsoever, because we are in total control. Absolute baloney. It's not true. Yeah, but it's very high tech now. Okay, so what? We are the one controlling the technology as well. We're the operators. We're the ones making it. We're the ones installing it. So I would also say to all these high-tech geeks and so on, come on, what are you doing? Use your brain to do the things that is good for humanity instead of making a quick buck out of things that is so damaging to the rest of us. Wake up time, big time, because I think that is awful. Use it to boost humanity, to find out great things. You got a supermind. Use it for something good, for beauty of humanity, not this kind of crap.
And you'll love it when it comes to the.
You
should try it.
Yeah, you would be loved. You would be loved. And
right.
My website is called lightonconspiracies.com.
Yes.
I've got several books. One is called Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. It's about this assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister, but also with all the connection to the whole global net, including the killing of JFK. I would recommend this. One is version Swedish, one in English. I would recommend the English one because it's 200 pages. There's also all the members of the Bilderberg Group from 1954 and onwards, all the ones that have been managed, and the agenda for each meeting. And I've got another book called Shadow Tears, Remind Me, Yolanda Yogapanda. There are several other books in different areas. All of them are to lift your spirit, because that's the whole point of this, to lift you. If I was asked to do these interviews to just come forward depressing facts, I would prefer shutting up. My task here is to expose what is going on, and then let's join. This is the time. It's a fantastic time to be alive, not to be depressed. Depression, by the way, is when you're too focused on I, me, and mine. My problems. You go down spiral. Instead, raise yourself give out a hand, help someone else. The more you help your other people, the more you feel about yourself. The other people feel better. People who see you do good, they feel better. You raise your energy, and the stronger you are, the more you can do for the world.
True.
And if I could please end with a prayer.
Thank you.
I'm not a religious person. I see myself as a spiritual person. Religion in my book is just a power tool. I would like to say, may the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. Victory to that light. Because it's only by healing them that they will stop. As long as they're so filled with greed and all of these things and hatred, it will just go on. But love has an incredible power to heal. And that's the way forward, in my opinion. Compassion, forgiveness, love, but first, transparency, bravery, stand up, become whistleblowers or whatever you want, heart openers or whatever you want to call it. Be the brave ones. Come to us. We will welcome you. And the time is now. It's never been a better time than now. We will understand that you are afraid, and we will treat you that way. I would also want to say that I've been part of exposing 2 serial killers that's been active since the late 50s all the way up until today. The 2 people, their name is Clyde Forshaw and Walter Tabinski. They've been part of many of the major conspiracies, and each have taken out more than 1,000 people, if what I've been able to find out. They're based in Toronto, and I exposed them not out of hate or revenge or anything like that. I just wanted to stop. The madness has to stop. And after I started doing that, what happened was that my website was totally smashed up. Payment system, everything has been... So all my income, which not a rich man, I'm living on absolute minimum, has just been wiped out. So if anyone would like to support me in what I've done, for 30 years. I have a family to take care of, children to feed. Please, donations are extremely appreciated. If you want, buy my books, sign up for my newsletter, become a member, and so on. And I will do my utmost to deliver as much quality info and whatever. Also, if you any type of speech or anything where I can make a difference, or if there's a difficult situation, maybe a stand down with police or whatever, if I can be in the front trying to keep a calming effect on the whole thing, if I can, I'll be there. Call me, I'll be there. And with that, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Ole.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure.